Welcome to 12 Hours in the Future with Maria Sanchir. Today, my guest is artist, actor, writer, director, and former artistic director of Belmont House in the Bronx, founder and director of Lehman Stages at Lehman College at City University of New York, Professor Dante Albertie. We had a virtual conversation with Professor Albertie, he from his home in New York and me from my home in Ulaanbaatar, the capital city of Mongolia. Thank you, Professor Albertie, for accepting my invitation to be a guest tonight. And I wanted to start with a question that I've been asking many people because we're in this difficult time. And I was wondering if you have developed any hobbies or habits or skills, or maybe you had some time to see something that you haven't seen during these lockdowns and pandemic time at home.
Yeah, well, thank you for that question, and it's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, what I have discovered is that I really, really like tequila. I'm a big fan of tequila. That has definitely become something that I've fallen in love with over the over the course of the pandemic. It's given me time to. I spent a lot of time with my family, and that time has been great. It really has, and I don't want to paint a picture of, I was this very, very, very busy person and I had no time, because, I'm in, what I do is connected to the academic world, and the academic world, while it's busy, there's time to sort of get your thoughts together. The academic world is not the same as, the world we were just talking about, maybe with, consulting with a law firm or business. So I wasn't, it's not like I was frantically busy and didn't have time for my family, but I really got to spend a lot of time with my daughter, who's 15, and time that I really cherish, and it was also, we had some tragedy in the family. My father passed away in the beginning of the pandemic when things were really just starting to, when people were really just starting to get sick. He had cancer that they thought they could treat, and he went into the hospital and he caught COVID, and it was just terrible.
Oh, I'm so sorry for that.
Thank you. So with the exception of that, there's something about the staying home and being locked in that almost felt like a reset. I found a lot of times as an artist, or a lot of times as someone who creates things or has to formulate artistic endeavors from scratch. You get dry, or you lose your commitment, and you have to reaffirm it, and you have to feel fresh and all these things. And that's sort of hard to do when you're caught up in the wheel of deadlines, or caught up in the wheel of,
the routine.
Yeah, there's a presentation that we do every year at this time, and we have to do it again, or there's, just getting caught up in that. So that pattern was broken, by the pandemic, and there was something really sort of refreshing about that. And it made me very sort of eager to get back and do some work. Where we are now with the pandemic is pretty scary, because I think people were just getting their heads around that we were sort of coming back to, life. And then this idea that we might have to slow things down or shut things down, I think is really scary to people. I think there's going to be real resistance to it, because people in my field especially are really just starting to talk about getting their venues back online, and all the work that takes, because you don't just snap your fingers and have it happen. And this feeling of the unknown as you're trying to do that the Performing Arts Center here at Lehman is scheduled, they want to open October 2nd. There's a lot of gigantic question marks between now and October 2nd. Nobody knows what's happening.
Yeah, a lot of talk about the big concert on Broadway, back to Broadway, something. Yeah. Broadway back.
There's a lot of shows that are, there are a lot of shows that are getting ready to come back, and we'll see how that works. Even if the way that the financial model works is that these Broadway shows can't open up and pay their companies if they're doing half full or a quarter full, and then you start saying, okay, so you have to be vaccinated. A large part of the population is vaccinated, but is there enough people that are vaccinated to make it economically feasible for these shows to happen? So there's a lot of unknown parts to this.
Right. Yeah. Professor Albertie, I have heard you talk about drama studies program that you had at Purchase College at CUNY. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering that if you could tell us why it was so fun, because you mentioned it was so fun, and tell us what actually really stayed with you from the program. That is very interesting.
Yeah, so Purchase is a state school, New York State school, and really considered the arts school for the state, and has a very, very good reputation. It's one of the, I saw an article recently where they were named one of the top 20 art schools, acting conservatories, dance conservatories in the world. They're known for their arts programs. When I got into Purchase, I had already gone to school. I got, my academic career is complicated. By the time I got to Purchase, I had already been in college. A couple of years, and I had considered applying for the conservatory. Conservatory is very, very difficult to get into, but I thought about applying, and I think what stopped me from doing it, one, just fear, but a very close second was this idea that I would have to sort of start from scratch and go through, a 4-year program, and I was, at that point, I was ready to try to get school over with. So there was a program that was relatively new called Drama Studies. And why Drama Studies wound up being so great is that we weren't exactly guinea pigs, but the program was very, very new. And we were really allowed to create our own work and hustle around and get people that we knew to be in our work, come up with original projects. It felt, in retrospect, as I'm talking about it now, it felt more like the world. It felt more like they didn't have a choice, really, because the program wasn't fully fleshed out, or the program was still trying to decide what it was going to be, or it was growing, whatever it was. So it was loose. And,
right.
And because it was so loose, we were free to do with it what we wanted. And the story that always, comes to mind when I talk about that is that the conservatory program was very, 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 very strict. And they had to be in the program for a couple of years before you got to do a show. And they had, you couldn't do things on the outside, whatever. So we had people from the conservatory come over to, I remember this one time, there was a knock at the door at like 10 o'clock at night. I opened up the door and it was somebody from the conservatory company. And it was, all kinds of clandestine, like, he was a spy, and he came over and he said, hey guys, I'm doing a show, and I'd like you to be in it because I saw you perform and blah, 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 blah. And the conservatory can't know I'm doing it, so we're going to have rehearsals down in the basement. And it was this thing where I think it was a Soldier Story was the show that we were doing. And it was a thing where they wanted to work and they wanted to direct, but they couldn't do it formally because there were rules. The conservatory, the acting class at the conservatory had like 12 kids in it. So it was a very, very tight group. There were real rules, the standard conservatory. That's when I realized that, okay, maybe we weren't getting the intense, acting teaching and acting education and acting training, but we had the ability to follow our bliss in a way that people in the conservatory sort of admired. So, that's really what made the program exciting to me. It's called something different now. I think it's called theater studies. Now. It's the same degree, but it's the same basic idea, but the name of the department has changed, I believe. And right. I think when I was there it was the third year or fourth year, something like that.
Just starting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm one of the rare people. It's only a small group of us that got their undergrad degree at Purchase and got their grad degree at Purchase, because Purchase doesn't have a lot of graduate degree programs. So my graduate degree was in arts administration, and the focus really was entrepreneurship in the arts. So it was really a degree where we were, and again, free, and again, guinea pig, the first year of this program. It was really about us basically trying to create an artistic enterprise from scratch, which was really exciting. And I really sort of saw the difference between people my age going back, because I went back when I was, how old was I? 49, 48, something like that. Seeing me come back and be in this program. And when you asked me what I wanted to do as my thesis was very brick and mortar. I wanted to create a company for the Bronx in the Kingsbridge Armory. And I wanted the kids that were coming out of the program, the kids that were coming out of the undergraduate program and coming into the grad program, they were doing apps. They were creating, it was all companies online, which I thought was fascinating. But that's when I realized, okay, I'm 20 years older than everybody, or 30 years older than everybody, whatever it was, because my frame of reference when it came to creating something from scratch, creating an app, didn't even occur to me.
Right.
I mean, part of that is the way that I've come up and what I've done my whole life, but an app wasn't, it just did. So I was the old fart talking about, hey, I'm going to build a. So that's how it worked out. But going back to school, especially in the campus where I walked around as an undergrad, was a really, really interesting experience, and really brought me back to, it's almost like when an actor puts on a costume. For a lot of actors, when they put on the external, it works something in the internal, and they feel like the character. When I started walking around the campus, I was back to my 18-year-old self. And wondering if my shirt looked cool, and doing all of that kind of stuff. Very weird. I
feel ya.
Yeah. Very weird. Yeah. Very weird feeling.
Yeah, because I graduated my first university 16 years ago now, and I went back 11 years ago I studied language, Mandarin in China, and I was student at University of Technology of Beijing, and I was same age as my teachers were. And I feel
yeah.
How it's
yeah. Some of my teachers I was older than, but just only a few, thank God. Only a few.
Absolutely, yeah, it's a great feeling. Mm-hmm. So I was watching Life in Art, the episode that you are guest at. For people who haven't seen it, it's episode 37, available on YouTube. I think everybody should see that. It's very fun to watch. So you're saying that you're more director than the actor. Do you feel the same? Because I'm asking because the episode was from 2016. Maybe your opinions changed. And why do you think so?
Yeah, it's funny. My opinion hasn't changed about that, but what I've really come to realize, I don't know if you've felt this way too, is that you'll be talking to somebody and you'll say, "Oh, I was a kid," or that was so many years ago. I'm a different person now. What I've really come to realize is that the 2016 Dante isn't the same as the 2021 Dante. And the 2019 Dante probably isn't the same as the 20. I like speaking about myself in the third person, makes me sound very important. The 2019 version isn't the same. You know, I went back and watched it a couple of months ago, and it was just interesting. It was interesting to sort of get a sense of what was going through my head, and just feeling like, you know, my essence is the same, but the person that I am and the life experiences and maybe how I think about things has changed. Changes. The acting
Certainly.
part of it, you know, the acting has always been sort of the gateway drug. You know, everybody's, you know, 9 out of 10 people that I talk to that have some sort of, you know, some sort of career in the arts, in the performing arts, started out as an actor. And people are lucky enough to stay near it. You know, I tell the kids this in my class all the time. They're lucky enough to live a life where they stay near the fire that warms them. You know, if the fire is your love of the performing arts and you're feeling like you want to express yourself, the further away you get from that fire, the colder you get. Like we were talking about, you know, the creativity goes right out the window when right? So you're far away from the fire. You're feeling very cold, right? As you get back,
Definitely.
you get warmer and warmer and warmer and warmer. The directing, so acting was exciting, and acting was this thing that opened up my eyes to what was possible. And one of the few things, or what felt like the only thing that I did that people would say, hey man, that was great. You know, it wasn't Little League. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't me being on the track team. There was a feeling that I got back from people when I did my thing that, you know, that I got addicted to. Because, you know, in some ways it's an addiction. But as I got a little bit older, I realized that, perhaps that it was still exciting and there was still joy in it, but there were people, there's a thing that makes an actor great that maybe I didn't have. There were people around me that were clearly better at it. It didn't seem like I was having the same impact in the world with it. And I sort of tried directing, not as an antidote. It was just, you know, we needed a director for something. And the reaction that I got back from people based on that made me feel like, oh, this might be the way that you communicate. This might be the way that you contribute. Because I started to feel, you know when you have to sort of, you know, and again, you know, I'm a black hole as far as affirmation and all of that stuff. And I think a lot of people in the arts are, you know, I've gotten better, but you can tell when you've done work that's moved people, or people are spontaneously communicating with you about how your work made them feel. And that started to happen a lot. And I realized, you know, hey, I love this. It's
right.
Very close to the feeling that I get as an actor, because as a director, and especially as an artistic director of an organization, you're responsible for everything. So you can trace, doesn't matter what people like. If they like the soap in the bathroom, you made that choice. If they like the play, you pick that play. If they like the director, you pick that director. If they like it, so you can bathe in the glow of that love. That being said, you're also responsible for everything. So if it's not good, you know what I mean? Live by the sword, die by the sword. If it's not good, that's all you.
So
too.
You get the high.
Yes,
still.
you can't get a bad review in the Times and say that's not my problem. It's your problem. It's the Times beat up the director. Okay, you can't say that was his fault. I hired him. It's my fault. So I think if if somebody who knew me gave me a script and said, hey man, this is a character that the minute I read it, I thought of you, and would you want to give this a try? I would do that. I think that might be exciting. I would love to see if I've learned anything about acting through the millions of hours, it seems like, that I've worked with actors. I wonder if I have embodied any of it, or picked it up, or picked up something through osmosis, or coming at it as a 54-year-old person, as opposed to when I was acting in my early 20s. How different am I?
It's good to know. However, it makes me want to ask you if, okay, let's say somebody gave you a script that is interesting, that you said agreed to do that. However, when on set or on the stage, will you be able to just put your directing part away and just, like when you can see that there's some mistake happening and you're like, but you're an actor and you cannot, but yeah, will you be able to do that?
I know what you mean. I think so. I think because just me, the inner conversation that I would have with myself about really being present and really listening and trying to be as real as possible, I think would shut out everything else. I have a feeling that if I decided I was going to do some sort of role, I would be, I would be even more self-absorbed than I am now, which is really saying something. I would be really, there'd be no room for anything else, I don't think. And it would really be something, I got a compliment. My mind goes back to this as I'm speaking to you, and it happened at Purchase. I was asked I did a play, a silly play that somebody, silly, I mean, we were doing all kinds of crazy stuff, but that a friend of mine had written. And I had auditioned for a bunch of stuff and didn't get any roles. And then we did this silly play, and, there's all kinds of things going on. And I walked out half naked, and, all kinds of craziness. Okay. After that play, the director who I auditioned for, who didn't use me, came to me and said, I'd like to use you. And the role wasn't a huge role. It was a smallish role, but the role was basically a small town sheriff who was just, fair and tired.
Right.
And there was something about, and kind and very matter of fact, but very, very unflappable and just, world weary and all these things. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking that, oh, this guy reminds me a lot of my father, and feeling like it was very easy to embody that person. And I did the show, and it really was a small part. I was on stage for 5 minutes or whatever, but I did the show. And one of my professors, who was a head of the OB committee and was a reviewer and wrote theater reviews in the Village Voice, we had a conference. And when I walked in the door, he gave me really, really wonderful praise, like, that I'd never gotten before for my acting. It was always like, oh yeah, you were good, or oh yeah, that was fine, or oh yeah, you should work on this or work on that. He gave me this real acting is being, and you were really being in that, and I realized that if there is a character that really speaks to somebody, if you read the character and you really understand them in a way that I sort of understood parts of my father, that you can transcend maybe what training you don't have, or you can transcend your weaknesses, and I remember being on stage and not being nervous. Nerves have always been a thing. Sometimes, I'm always, like that.
Stage fright.
Little anxious, sure. And being worried, especially as a young actor, worried about, the lines and, am I going to miss these lines? And I never felt that way. There was something about there was something about putting on this coat and feeling like I couldn't be second guessed. You know, I was this guy. I knew this guy. I was the expert in the room on this guy. That, you know, and I think all actors really want to feel that.
Wow.
I think, you know, the actors that I've worked with really want to feel like I'm the world authority on, you know, this person that I'm inhabiting, this human being that I'm inhabiting. It gives you a confidence, you know,
because the character was because the character was sheriff. Makes me think about the Pearl River town that you refer to as a cop town. Was it like any influence, or did it help you that you spent some time in there, lived there, that maybe every like third or fourth guy was in the sheriff department or something? Did that help?
Yeah, I mean, Pearl River, you know, like anything, when I made that generalization, when you make a generalization sort of, oh, it's a cop town, obviously not everybody's a cop. But there was a really, really interesting book, and, you know, was it a book or a movie? Might have been a book and a movie. I know it was a documentary called My Father's Gun. And it was basically a young man growing up as the son of a cop. But a big part of the story was this town called Pearl River, where New York City cops had sort of discovered it. And then, you know, almost like with the immigrant community, where someone comes and establishes, oh, I have an apartment in this building, and now I'm the super, or I have an apartment in this building, and, you know, I can help get you an apartment. And then all of a sudden, you know, the entire building is people from the same town in the Dominican Republic or something like that. This was, you know, one cop went up and then recommended it to another cop, and then another cop went up, and that's a large portion of the town. My girlfriend at the time that I went all the way through high school with was her father was a homicide detective. And my father was worked in correction. He was the warden of the House of Detention for Men. So he was in law enforcement also. So, and my father would come home. My father was loving, kind, and tired, just like the guy that I played. You know, while there were a lot of cops, firemen, you know, people that worked for the utilities, maybe some teachers, you know, civil service, that kind of thing. There were also a whole group, you know, as I was thinking back, there's a whole group of people that I went to high school with, and my high school class was very small, but there was a whole bunch of people that I went to high school with that went on to do, you know, had nothing to do with law enforcement and were very creative and everything else. But the arts weren't, there were arts programs, but I don't think the arts were thought of as something that you would do as a career. I don't think, and not necessarily with the people most of the people that I hung out with thought that arts was something that you could do. Although I might be wrong about that. But I have a friend or two that have gone on to, you know, sort of found a love for the arts early on and have continued down that road. You know, the law enforcement cop town thing, I had that in my upbringing even before we moved to Pearl River when I was in 5th grade. I had, you know, people in the family were firefighters, people in the family that were cops. I came from that sort of working class, blue collar civil servant background. So, you know, as I'm projecting out and I'm saying, oh, it's a cop town, probably what I'm really saying is that's sort of where I came from. And, you know, again, my girlfriend at the time, who I'm still friends with to this day, you know, obviously when you have a girlfriend and you're sort of, you know, best couple in high school and you're sort of very serious and everything else, the way her family and the way she was brought up, I think impacted me also.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
I felt like I was always a lot of times I was always sort of the slightly odd one. Not odd in a bad way, just the way I thought of things. I was the guy, in high school, for instance, I was, the class clown, but my best friend was most likely to succeed.
Right.
So I hung out. It was, Dante would be such a wonderful student if he applied himself type. If there were 250 students in the graduating class, I was 206. Thinking back and now having a 15-year-old daughter who was more serious than I am, but is still sort of, school is not her favorite thing. Maybe there's an ADD component, concentrating was never, there was an anxiety component. So when I found theater or got a little taste of performing and I felt like, oh, I like this and I'm good at it, I just latched onto it, because it felt
you found your outlet.
Yeah, and really, yes, and really what it felt like back then was I like it, and I can tell in my gut that I know how to do it. And that started even before seventh grade. I'd be writing short stories, and I read a short story in class, and the teacher was like, "Oh my God, that was great, and you should write another one." And then came in, and she's like, "Do you have a short story to share with us?" And then all of a sudden I was this famous writer, and having people, having an audience going, "Yay!" was, incredible to me because at that point in your life, I didn't feel like there was anything, that I could do particularly well. I was, doing everything, baseball, little league and that kind of stuff. And I was, first of all, so friggin' nervous. And second of all, so, and just okay, where it was just like, hey man, thanks for trying, it was the not, wow, that was great. I never really got that. And I always sort of wanted it. My parents were very supportive. I don't want to say that my parents were telling me that I was, awful or anything. They didn't. But this feeling of, oh, I could really do this was very exciting.
Yeah, I wanted to ask what your parents said when you said, I'm going to be this.
That's a funny thing too, looking back at it from my perspective now and having a young daughter and, thinking about her coming up the way I came up, and running a theater in the Bronx and my parents coming to the shows and being so proud. And then, getting reviews in the paper that they could show their friends and so proud. There was no money, and at some point, now, I was going into my 30s and didn't have, if I was getting paid, that was money that I went and raised myself, so, and my parents not coming from that. My parents, feeling like, wow, he's way behind the 8 ball. There are people that he went to school with that were thinking about who they were going to marry and what kind of house they were going to buy, 2 years after they got out of high school, and I was not of that head at all. All my thinking was the next show. Can we make it great? Because when you're running a small theater, you really can't have a bomb because you're really, you can't have a show that's not good because you're sitting in the audience with you're getting up and greeting your audience before the show. And then you're sitting with your audience while they're watching the show. And, if it's not good, that's 16 performances, because each show ran about 16 or 20 performances. That's 16 or 20 nights of hell. So
I hear ya.
So it was always about thinking about what was next, and that, as crazy as that sounds, there's something really good about that because you don't really have time to think about anything else. Later on, 10 years ago or so, I bought a house, and we loved the house, but I let myself get caught up in trying to keep up with the Joneses. All of a sudden, the conversation wasn't about the next project. The conversation was about redoing somebody's kitchen and what they paid for this and what they paid for that. And that was a world I did not know and absolutely could not compete in because I had come to it so late. Listen, CUNY is very, very fair, and they, they pay me what they pay me, and that's all great. But, I work for the state. I'm not a rich person. So after I sort of came out, after I sort of joined the real world, it dawned on me, I had spent years doing the work, but I hadn't spent years chasing the dollar. Now, obviously, I had hoped that doing the work would bring the dollars. Sometimes it did. I wouldn't have the job I have now if it wasn't for it. But it wasn't a situation where I could continue to run my own company and have all the things that I wanted to have. When I started the company at 23, I ran the company from 23 to 33. Those are two different ages. Very, very different ages. So, if I wanted to be married and have a family, I couldn't do it.
Understand you.
In the way it was then, in the way it was set up then, I couldn't do it. What is fabulous about the gig I have now is that it's very, 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 very similar to what I was doing in a lot of ways, except I'm paid, pretty well, and I have health insurance, and I don't have to clean the bathroom before the shows. I don't have to go. People would come up the stairs. We would do a world premiere of a show, and I knew that there were agents from New York coming up, to consider moving the show downtown, and there were money people coming up, and people came up the stairs for the show, and I came out of the men's room with a toilet brush in my hand. So that was artistic director. I always used to joke that artistic director in Latin means he who cleans the toilets, because you really had to do everything. So, with this gig at Lehman and being able to create all these programs and work with young actors and stuff, and not have to worry about, where the next paycheck is coming from, felt like running a race and somebody had taken the cinder blocks off my feet. Someone had taken the 2,000-pound weight off my feet and I could fly, so that's what was really, really exciting about the gig here.
This concludes our first episode in our conversation with Professor Dante Albertie. We will continue.
12 Hours in the Future is produced by Jim Carney, Maria Sanchir, and we had technical help from Yves Dessous. Special thanks to Professor Tom O'Hanlon and Dean James Mann. The executive producer and host of 12 Hours in the Future is Maria Sanchir. 12 Hours in the Future with Maria Sanchir is a series of conversations recorded simultaneously in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, and around the world by the Bronx Journal Radio through the resources of Lehman College, City University of New York.
You can reach us at info@12hoursinthefuture.com. We're on Instagram and YouTube.
Or you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. This show is protected under international copyright and may not be recorded or retransmitted without written consent. Until next time, when we see you 12 hours in the future.